Denny Somach, and we're speaking to Rick Levy about his new book and some really fascinating stories. High in the mid-60s, how to have a life as a musician but not be famous. Is that
that's the whole hook of it. How to have a fabulous life in music without being famous. Because I was never the bride; I was the bridesmaid. And you know, at some point, I mean, there's a lot of this where you want to be the star, you want the band to make it, you know. After Wax, it was really a devastating experience for all of us because we were real young. I kind of regrouped. I was also, by that time, married and on our way to having a child. Mm-hmm. So I said, I better do something. So for a few years, I worked in business and I taught school for a couple of years, both of which helped me a whole lot when I swung back time into full-time music. Mm-hmm. And that started with a resurgence of the Limits in the 80s when we started Luxury Records, and I learned licensing. We licensed an album in France, we licensed one in England. I started to know all the players in the business, college radio, the early days of college radio. And about that time in 85, which was just about the first resurgence of the 60s scene, that 20 years later.
A nostalgia thing.
Yeah, right. Somebody called me, I was still in Allentown, hey, Jay Proctor from Jay and the Techniques wants to start playing again. So I said, well, I'm busy, I got the Limits, I'm teaching school, you know, I got my son. I said, but I'll come to a rehearsal. Well, Jay just, you know, floored me. I mean, we did try a little Tenderness, you know, besides Apples, Peaches, and Keep the Ball, which are great, you know, bubblegum pop soul songs. But when he did, like, you know, I've Been Loving You Too Long, I said, oh, this is shit I love. I want to do this. So that ended up being almost a 25-year relationship. And from that, I expanded into managing other acts as well, even if I didn't play with them. Mm-hmm. I took on Freddie Cannon for a while, The Tokens, Barbara Lewis, Dennis Yost and the Classics 4. And often if we do a package, we would back them up because we just had a really good tight band. So I started learning all the players in the nostalgia market, producers, venues, started having to learn, you know, backline writers and contract writers and all that kind of stuff. And for a long time I did it all independently. Then I started learning about the different agents that were part and parcel of that. That led me, and while I was doing that, I should say real quickly, I started an educational division where I started putting DVDs together for schools and libraries. One was Rock Roots, the history of rock. One was on jazz, one was on Caribbean music. I used live musicians, live students, and I sold those to schools and libraries. And that helped pay bills for, you know, a number of years. Then a real interesting story, we were in Hong Kong. We were backing Dennis Yost and a couple other acts, and Peter Noonan was headlining. Now, I'd known Peter for probably 10 or 12 years because back then he didn't carry a band. He just carried a music director. So we did our thing, then, you know, Peter did his thing. He sounded great, and I felt I knew him enough. You know, I after the show, I said, Peter, you're great, man. I mean, you're still 15 years old, you sound great, you look great. I said, but that band you got, man, it sounds like 38 Special playing Herman's Hermit song. And he goes, I know, Rick, I don't know what to do with these lads. You know, I said, well, listen, if you ever want to talk about it, I'd love to, you know, do something. Year later, I get a call. You know, I'm thinking about, I got a couple of cruises coming up and I'd like to just change it up for a cruise, different band. Turned out I got 3 other guys, all from Allentown. Who I knew, who were 60s, just 60s aficionados. They loved the sound. We ended up 3 years. The drummer is still with Peter, almost 20 years later. He's got a great band. For me personally, there was a bit of managerial drama going on that I didn't want, and also in that situation I was only being paid as a sideman, and I didn't have the time to be booking other acts, because as you know, if I'm playing with one act and I've got 3 others working, I'm making a great pay night. So we left on really amicable terms. Matter of fact, just a couple of years ago, we were all at Westbury together. He had never heard the Box Tops.
Right.
And he just comes up to me and says, great band, great songs.
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, he's kind of an iconic status in this thing. And it just led me to meeting so many people. You know, I played with Bo Diddley for a while, and I used to go to his house. He lived an hour from here. And, you know, we'd hang out and stuff. And so for me, it was like, okay, how can I keep reinventing myself? And it doesn't only apply to music. I mean, I think the book, you know, has an application to anybody who has a passion. How do you find a way to keep that ignited, given the fact that maybe in our field more than most, there's a lot more rejection than acceptance, you know?
So right now, you just got done and you have some upcoming dates with the Box Tops.
Yeah.
Now, your affiliation with them goes further back than you being in the band.
Yeah, 20 some years when I just managed them.
Okay, now how did that come about? How'd you get
I was doing a show in Nashville with Jay and the Techniques, and Gary Talley, the original Box Tops guitarist, was in the audience.
Right.
We started talking. He said, well, you know, they're getting back together. They were thinking of getting back together. They're going to Memphis, which is where they're all from.
Right.
And they were going to cut an album of, not of new stuff, of all 60 songs that were really important to them as kids coming up. I said, you mind if I come down and listen to a couple sessions?
Right.
Came down on my own dime. Loved the guys. Loved Alex, as quirky as he was.
Right.
Great singer. You know, and I said, how about we do this, guys? Since you're just starting it off, I don't want a contract. I don't want anything.
Right.
Let me just see if I can get you some work. And that turned into 14 years. And then sadly, Alex passed away at 59 from a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody thought we would do it again until the very end of 2015. Bill Cunningham, another founder, called me and said, you know, Gary and I are thinking about maybe doing something. Bring you on board, get some sidemen, get live horns, and keep the legacy alive. Because I was still getting calls for the Box Tops.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to hit an audience other than just an oldies group. There's some hit factor about the Box, like the Zombies.
Right.
Although the Zombies are in the stratosphere now, but there's something about, if you're doing, you know, that Memphis thing really honestly, you're gonna get a wide audience.
Right.
You know, and we see that at fairs and festivals. We see kids coming up, and we hit the road right away. And after about 6 months being out on the road, we got contacted by the Happy Together tour, which is the biggest oldies tour there is. We did that in 2017. That was like 48 cities. Come back, we do a cruise. Mm-hmm. Come back from that, we get asked to go to Germany to do a TV special with Donovan, mm-hmm. Peter Fonda, Klaus Vormann, which was a gas. I never met Klaus. Man. What a sweet guy. Come back, we're not home 2 days, and we get a call that the Box Tops are being inducted into the Memphis Music Hall of Fame. Now, I don't want to disparage the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, but Memphis is not political.
Right.
Memphis is all about being a musician for Memphis.
Right.
I wasn't one of the originals, but I got to tell you, man, they just embraced me like I was a lifelong Memphian. Right. And Aretha was inducted this year, and they had a big gospel mm-hmm. choir. Eddie Floyd, 83 years old. Carla Thomas showed up. I mean, it was just beautiful. And matter of fact, the director of the Hall of Fame kept asking me, you know, I got acts you can manage if you need more acts. Right. You're so damn good. I said, no, right now at this age, I think, you know, because for me, Denny, it was like all the business I did was all done so I could keep playing. Because that's what it really comes down to, so that I could keep playing music. Right. And, you know, we're doing different packages. There's one called American Pop, which is us, the Buckinghams and the Grassroots. We're doing a show in Westbury with Tommy James, who I love. Mm-hmm. I hear his book is coming out as a movie.
His book's great.
Yeah, isn't it?
Be a movie.
Yeah. And of course, people always ask me if I'm related to Morris Levy, which I say no, I'm not. And you know, you can explain who he is.
Morris Levy is a legendary figure in the record industry, but you can Google him.
Yeah. We want to keep this on the up and up. And that takes us to right after the new year. We've got a couple shows, and we go on the Flower Power Cruise, which is the biggest 60s cruise. Right. Again, Tommy will be on that. Tommy James, Mike Love and the Beach Boys, Jefferson Starship. You know, the sad thing is we're losing people every week.
Right.
People are dying. And I got nothing against really good tribute bands. I think it helps keep the music alive.
Right.
What irks me is, you know, when some people will hear them when there's a really good band with at least some of the originals.
Right.
Now, I can tell you personally, if I lost either the desire or the ability to play and sing, I would stop. And there's some guys out there still doing it who shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
You know, but we keep a lot of integrity with the Box Tops. I don't know if I'll, you know, pick up another act to manage. I mean, I have certain parameters now. It would have to be an act that was.
Who would you like to approach and work with?
That's a great question, and it would necessarily be a '60s or '70s act,
Sure,
because
of course.
that's the era.
Right.
That's the era I know.
But who's out there that should be capitalizing on their great history, their great songs?
I
Even
think
if they don't have all the original members.
I think
they
the
got a
Turtles
couple.
could do more than just a
Yeah.
Happy Together tour.
Yeah.
I think Chuck Negron could do more. The Zombies are doing great.
Yeah.
I had ideas years ago for Peter Noon.
Right.
I think, you know, he's so well entrenched that it wouldn't happen. I think it would have been a really cool thing because of his background in
Yeah.
TV, my background in visual arts too. You know, he could be a bigger production. I always wanted to get involved with the Hollies.
Right.
You know, but
They're still
now,
out there.
Yeah, they're out there.
They're
but
not doing what they should be doing.
no, without Graham or Alan Clark,
Right.
you know, you've really lost something significant. Searchers, I would have loved to, you know, Eric Burden, you know, because they're all doing shows, but I really say this, very few are doing the kind of concept that we're doing in the Box Tops,
Right.
including multimedia with not just of the Box Tops, but everything that went on in Memphis in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was High Records or Sun Records or Stax Records or anything like
Right.
that. And the personal connection. Bill and Gary went to high school with Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn.
Right.
So that's something you talk about on stage, you know. And we also do a lot of visual things because I think people get very tired of seeing the same guys in the same position.
Right.
For example, because of the Booker T tie-in, Bill will go from bass to Hammond, and I'll go over to bass.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a change there. Gary does play electric sitar on
Right.
Cry Like a Baby. And then on Neon Rainbow, I just started playing ukulele because that's on the record. I never
Right.
played a ukulele before. So we're trying to keep the legitimacy of it.
Okay, so how does somebody get the book?
Well, there's here's the book. It's a great Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa gift. High in the mid '60s, and the subtitles.
Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Yeah,
You know, those are
Grandmother's
two of the biggest
Day.
holidays
Yeah,
for books.
man. And you know, baby boomers, yes. Although a young kid came up to me at a gig the other night and said, you know, I'm learning stuff about the music business. I said, that's good. It's a good thing. It's Crossroads Press. There's a couple ways to do it. Probably the fastest is just go to my website, ricklevy.com, RICKLEVY, because there's a click and buy.
Mm-hmm.
You can also go to Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, all the online sites. It's digital. There's a trade paperback, and there will be an audio.
Great.
And as you suggested, I might try to get some of the artists to, to put a little word or two in. Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay. Thank you for being on. Good
Thank
luck
you
with
for
the book.
Thank you for
I
coming
hope
to
that-
St. Augustine, Florida.
Hey,
Man. It's a great
really,
place.
here we
man.
are. Okay, so that's it for today. Toodaloo, Denny Somach. We'll see you again.